Welcome to AI for You. Today's use case focuses on creating an AI-powered thought partnership system for strategic planning and decision-making. This is a little more involved than many of the prompts I include, but it showcases a critical way to use these tools. Many of us work in isolation when developing new initiatives, policies, or solutions, missing opportunities for diverse perspectives and critical analysis before implementation. Set up a structured process using multiple AI models as virtual advisors for important decisions. Start off by clearly documenting your challenge, your proposed solution, and your reasoning, and then engage different AI models and use different prompts that have specific roles. So one might be a supportive collaborator, another as a devil's advocate, and third, maybe an industry expert. Use the prompt chain in today's show notes to systematically work through your idea with each different model, asking them to identify blind spots, challenge assumptions, and suggest alternative approaches. Take the feedback from one model and present it to other models for counter arguments and refinement. This approach helps you stress test ideas before presenting them to stakeholders. It lets you identify potential implementation challenges and develop more robust solutions. The key to all of this is maintaining critical thinking throughout the process. Use the AI to strengthen your own analysis rather than replacing your professional judgment. This method is particularly valuable for complex decisions involving multiple stakeholders, budget considerations, or significant organizational change where the cost of getting it wrong is high. In today's episode, we explore strategic AI implementation with Michael DePiro, the Senior Coordinator for Faculty Development and Professionalism at Case Western University. Let's jump right in. Welcome to AI for You. I'm Brian Piper, an AI and content marketing consultant, helping higher education institutions become more effective and efficient. This show explores practical, actionable ways that higher education professionals can integrate AI into their workflows to solve real problems and create more meaningful human connections. Each episode delivers a specific use case you can implement today, followed by an in-depth conversation with experts who are successfully leveraging AI in admissions, marketing, advancement, and across a campus. You'll walk away with concrete strategies, tools, and inspiration to make AI work for you and your institution. All right, Michael, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me.
So start off by telling me a little bit about how you're integrating AI into your work at Case Western.
Yeah, so as far as my shop specifically is concerned, I'm focusing mostly on back office work right now, which I think is a really good starting place for teams that are trying to bring AI into their daily workflow. We definitely are excited about moving into solving some bigger problems, but right now just identifying low value, low risk, repetitive tasks, sort of menial tasks that are taking time away from our team. So that's a lot of drafting of things and a lot of data analytics and a lot of research. We have a project that we're working on right now to build a RAG, a retrieval augmented generation system, to be a hub spot or a hub for end users to be able to query processes and procedures. I work in faculty affairs, and so for tenure promotion, there's 1,000 forms and things you have to do. And so we have the spider web of websites where all the PDFs and checklists exist. And so it's an easy way for us to put all that in one controlled environment, put an LLM on top of it, and then the end user can use that environment. So some of those use cases, I think, are the ones that are really most impactful from a day-to-day right now.
Yeah, and that's such a critical way to get started with integration, is getting those kind of low risk proof of concept ideas that you can get out there that are already starting to add value and save people time, just to get them using the tools and starting to recognize the possibility and the potential.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about your AI journey. Were you an early adopter or were you resistant at first?
Yeah, no, I am, as with all things, with most things technology, I'm a super early adopter, right? I'm the guy that's on the pre-order list for all the new tech and watching all the different blogs and websites and stuff. So like anything else, I was an early adopter. I was fortunate enough in 2017 to get to see a presentation by Paul Reitzer, who has the Martin AI Institute, SmarterX here in Cleveland. Long before ChatGPT was anybody was talking about that, Paul was leading that discussion, and I left that room and immediately went home and started taking a look at AI. And then as everything is unfolded, jumped on the bandwagon pretty quickly.
Such a great resource. I'm always promoting Paul and the team and what they're doing over there. We run into this all the time in higher ed, and as I consult with different institutions, I'm always seeing such hesitation and such challenges that institutions have around AI adoption. What do you think are some of the biggest barriers to integration?
I think some of them are true of large organization integration flat out. It's not really AI specific, right? So you've got a lot of legacy systems. You have a lot of people who have ownership over having built and built out those legacy systems, and AI can be a threat to them, right? So especially in the technology and data and information sector, and even with a lot of back-end business practices, the people that would have to make the decision or approve the decision to bring in these technologies are the people that their big career mark was they piloted this other system and they spent a lifetime building it and integrating it. And so it's hard for that person to be the person that then brings AI into it, right? So I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is a lot of people just don't understand what this technology is. They don't really have a point of comparison for other technologies. This is not the smartphone. This is not Google search. This is not the Gutenberg press. I mean, it's pretty unique, right? So you sort of have to, in my experience anyway, you sort of have to get some time with the tool to really start to understand the power of it and really start to see some of those exceptional use cases before you can really get a handle on the gravity of it. And I think if you don't have a handle on the gravity of it, you're sort of seeing it as like a tech buzz thing that's happening, and you're not really putting the appropriate amount of attention into it. So I think just a lack of literacy or awareness to the power of the tool, and then just large organization integration challenging for anything now.
So many institutions try to go think about this as just another technology that they're just adding to their tech stack, and it's really so much more than that. And you have to it's really change management and looking at how you need to get buy-in and create awareness and do the education instead of just turning on the tool and saying, here you go, you have access to this. So what advice do you have for institutions that haven't started doing anything with AI?
Yeah, get started. You're a little behind the ball. In a very near future, you're going to be really behind the ball. The first thing to do is to find a smaller adoption team. You can't do anything by yourself. And edicts from the mount, coming down from the C-suite, it's good. You need C-suite and you need leadership support, but it's hard if you have a member of leadership that says we need to start integrating AI. So, well, what does that functionally mean, right? I think getting together a group of folks that are representative of your organization, the different workflows, who kind of understand the different areas, functional areas in your organization, people that understand adaption, maybe that worked on other projects before where they had to adapt and integrate and then train staff and look at legacy systems, and just put 3, 4, keep it small, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. Probably be good at 1 or 2 or your early AI advocates, create an opportunity for them to contribute and sit them down and say, let's start coming up with a game plan. Let's start looking at what is the impact? What are the opportunities? What would this actually look like to us on the ground? It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to take some time. And I think just really recognizing that it's important enough to dedicate some resources to. And before you start dedicating financial resources and go out and start paying, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a week or a month for new tools, spend the resource in your own team and sit down and start identifying what's going on, where are those opportunities, and really let that team start curating what that solution might look like.
Yeah, and having that that roadmap, that strategy is so important. And we've seen some studies that have come out recently saying that there are a lot of businesses that are integrating AI that aren't seeing that return. Most of the times it's because they didn't do that upfront work to figure out what are we really replacing? What are we automating? What are we augmenting within our processes? And is that going to have the type of, time savings, increased efficiencies, increased enhancements of productivity or performance that we're really trying to capture? And how are we going to measure that? I think the measurement's super important as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think you hit on something important there. My counsel to folks would be to take the concept of, you mentioned augmentation, and really start frame it initially as augmentation as opposed to replacement. I think that's the big conversation everyone's having: is AI going to take all these things and completely replace them? I think the answer to that in some scenarios is yes, in other scenarios, no. But I think in all scenarios, there's going to be some level of augmentation there. So I think to start looking at AI from the beginning as a partner, as opposed to competition or a replacement, really helps frame it a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's so critical to have the expertise and the knowledge to know, not only what information and data to put in and what questions to ask, but also to be able to evaluate the output, because we know that it'll make things up, it'll go off the rails. And if you don't have the domain expertise to look at that output and say, this is quality, this is good, this is accurate, this is strategic, the machines can only do what we tell them to do. And only, the outputs are only as good as our judgment allows them to be. One of the things that AI can't do and may never be able to do is to take responsibility for the decision to put out into the world whatever it creates. That really lies on us. So what are some of the more interesting use cases of AI that you've seen or heard about in higher ed?
So a good friend of mine, who's one of his key phrases is responsible AI is boring AI. And so unfortunately, some of the most effective ones, they're fairly boring, right? It's that back office work. It's the, things that people that work in that space all the time wouldn't necessarily call it boring. But here at Case Western, for example, we have a world-renowned research database that they've been building for a very long time over at the library. It's really exceptional. And there was a team that went in and worked to put an LLM on top of that. Right. So they took an existing legacy system. They took an asset that they already had, again, with the augmentation. They didn't get rid of it and say, hey, how does AI replace this? They said, we've got this gem already. How do we make the user experience better? Right. So that kind of goes to the problem solving starts with problem statements. And so the database was not the problem. Sometimes the user experience of navigating it was, right. So that's where AI was able to come and improve the user experience, not the database itself. And again, the sort of back end areas, I know there's some incredible people doing some exceptional work that are very much blue sky thinkers. My day to day is a little bit more focused on AI responsibility, strategy, and literacy. So helping organizations think about how they're going to think about it and then actually deploy sort of that ground level. To steal the phrase, I know a lot of people have seen and talked about it, that was on LinkedIn a while ago. They don't want AI to create art and music so they can do the dishes and the laundry. They want AI to do the dishes and laundry so they can create art and music. So I've been doing a lot of dishes and laundry, right? So, but really exciting to see the people that are making art music too.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Forsyth Technical Community College was juggling siloed systems, fragmented data pipelines, and manual workflows across marketing, admissions, and CRM operations. Then they deployed Bolt Agents, Element 451's AI workforce platform. The result? Those agents handled over 80% of student inquiries, independently saving 183,060 human minutes and cutting call volumes by 14% within just 1 week of rollout. Curious what your AI teammates could look like? Try an agent today at element451.com/agents. I mean, we know AI is going to have to make some changes, make some adjustments. AI is definitely going to have an impact on every aspect of education. What do you think higher education marketers, admissions, alumni, professionals can start doing now to start preparing for the impact that AI is going to have on their jobs?
I think at a base level, again, it's AI literacy for your team. It's understanding, really starting to take a look at what individual roles are and what your team's function is and how the individual tasks kind of drive that function, and start to identify which of those tasks are going to be really prime use cases for AI. And then using the remainder of that to kind of figure out what does your team structure look like. If AI is doing these 15 things, what are the other 30 teams that our team is focusing on? And the other side of the technology revolution part of this is leaning into the human side of it. It's the things that AI is never going to be able to do, especially when you're talking about alumni relations, advancement, and then a large way recruitment as well, too. those are relationship-based functions. At the end of the day, seven-figure checks don't come from spreadsheets and the number of calls you had and all, touch points. So those are all important things, but your CRM doesn't land major donors, right? It's relationships that land those major donors. So taking a look at those areas that AI is never going to be able to touch and really starting to put a lot of resources into that, because that becomes your differentiator, right? Once everyone has figured out the same level of access essentially to these AI tools, it's no longer a superpower if everyone has it. So your differentiator becomes those human skills. And so really start leaning into those human skills.
Yeah, and use the AI to give you more time to develop those human skills, right?
100%. Yep. Yeah.
So, this technology is moving and evolving incredibly fast. Where do you see AI going in the next year or two in a way that's going to impact what we do?
A lot of folks are having conversations around agentic, right? So once the technology has agency, I think that's a completely different use of this technology. The adoption of that is going to be very rapid once we figure out how to put those tools together, even compared to what we've seen with the LLMs. And so I think really the agentic, I think the risk factor goes up tremendously as well too. And that's where, my prediction would be at some point in the not too distant future. And I think probably once the agentic revolution, so to speak, starts to really hit, you'd mentioned earlier accountability or responsibility for actions. It's one thing to look at the LLM and say you're not accountable for the response that you gave. Once we move to agentic, now you're talking about actions, so being responsible for an action that you took. I hope it's not horrible or dangerous or life-threatening to anyone, but I suspect something's going to happen that's going to make everyone kind of pause really quickly. And I think you'll start to see some legislation and some guardrails start coming out very quickly once that happens. But we've all heard experience, especially in the marketing world, right? You get a great intern and they jump on social media one day and they post something they shouldn't have posted. And then you have a lot of non-interns and I'll have to have a whole bunch of meetings about what you do about that, right? It's very much the same thing, but people are going to be giving these systems access to things that you don't give interns access to. And so it won't be as subtle as a social media post that you need to go walk back. But when those things happen, it's best to learn through others' mistakes, right? So anytime that happens, of course, when somebody else's social media team has a bump, of course, you have a meeting with your social media team and use that as a teachable moment. And I think the same thing's probably going to happen in the near future, I would suspect.
In that same vein, making sure that your crisis communications team is ready with messaging around what are you going to put out when your president is deep faked, and what are you going to do when AI posts something that it shouldn't post. And we need to have contingency plans in place for these things because they will happen. They are going to happen. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'd asked that question 3 or 4 years ago in a conference where everyone was talking about this new AI tool and all the different use cases. And one of the first things I asked was whether it actually is a marketing conference, may have been Maycon. And one of the first things I asked was, does your crisis communication team have a tab? I've seen those binders before and they're really impressive. There's a tab for all these things that have happened before or happened at other places that you need that communication and the response to be spelled out 100%, right? It's not something you think through in the moment. And so I agree with you 100% that there needs to be a way not just to respond to it from a PR perspective, but also in general. How do we verify trust and truth in the world of AI? And I think that's going to be something everyone should have a conversation about, not just in the emergency situations, but in the positive situations too. How do you maintain trust and how do you verify that, your brand is the one really doing what someone says your brand is doing?
And making sure that, we ask for so much trust from our students, from our alumni, from the families. We want to make sure that they recognize that when we're integrating these new technologies, we're really focusing on, the responsible and ethical issues that come with that sort of adoption.
Yeah, 100%. And I think to that point, transparency is key throughout the entire process. Again, you don't have to wait for an emergency for that, but if you have a statement from your president that came out and there's something wrong with it and you come back and say, well, AI made a mistake, and then it turns out you've been using AI to write his speeches for a year or her speeches for a year. Now there's another story behind the story, and being mindful of when you're using these tools, how you're using these tools, again, having them augment your work and not replace your work, but then just being transparent about how you're using the tools, celebrate the good things and the wins, but then also be very, very clear about the responsibility and the security protocols behind it and saying, listen, yes, we use these tools. Here's how we use them. And here's the benefit, and accept the fact that that comes with some risk. It's no secret that AI exists. Everybody knows it exists. So I think, again, when we talk about building trust, I think transparency goes a long way toward that.
One of the last questions that I always ask is, what specific AI use cases are the most helpful to you, either personally or professionally?
I am a huge fan of using AI as a thought partner and not really asking it for answers per se, but just having it sort of be my mental whiteboard and push back. A lot of times I'll be working on something and I'll specifically start a prompt. I connect it to my phone and then I have my earbuds, so I use the voice function pretty extensively. But I'll tell it at the very beginning, hey, I'm working on something. This is what I've come up with. Push back, poke holes in it. Tell me what's wrong. Give me alternative views, and just really challenging me to be able to go through those thought processes and think through everything and find try to identify blind spots has been huge for me, both personally and professionally. And sort of in that same vein, I'm a big fan of pitting all the models against each other. So I'll have that conversation with ChatGPT, and then I'll have it with Gemini. And then I'll have it with Claude, and then I'll come back to Gemini and say, this is what ChatGPT said. It's fun to, sort of watch them defend themselves against the other models. Every once in a while, you get 3 7s across the board and they all say the same thing. And there's a reason for that. Not saying that I take that as truth and move on with it, but it is fun sometimes to drop that in there and say, hey, ChatGPT, this is what Claude said. It said, you have no clue what you're talking about. And it comes back and defends its own answers, which is interesting sometimes to see the work behind how it came up with that response, right?
Taking the output from one model and putting it into the other model and saying, break this down, be the devil's advocate, give me the different perspectives. That's a great use case. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights and knowledge with our audience. Where can our audience find you if they're looking to stay connected with you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Michael DePiro. I work at Case Western. So LinkedIn's probably the best way to get a hold of me. Always looking for opportunities to chat with people about AI, specifically in higher education, and where it's going and how it's working and what they're doing with it. And, I appreciate the opportunity to join you today. I always love chatting with you and talking AI. I know you and I had talked about AI councils how many years ago, right? So always a pleasure to connect with you.
Michael's perspective on AI implementation offers a roadmap for higher ed institutions struggling with adoption. His emphasis on starting with back office applications provides a low risk entry point that can demonstrate value before moving to more complex implementations. The insight about institutional resistance being tied to legacy system ownership resonates with many organizations where decision makers have professional identities wrapped up in existing solutions. Michael's recommendation to form small, diverse teams provides a pathway around this challenge. I couldn't agree more with his thoughts on AI as augmentation rather than replacement. This approach reduces resistance while maintaining the human expertise that institutions need for quality control and strategic oversight. His example of using AI as a thought partner, including pitting models against each other, demonstrates how these tools can enhance human decision-making without replacing critical thinking. As we navigate the transition to agentic AI systems, Michael's warnings about responsibility and accountability become even more relevant. Institutions that invest now in understanding these tools and building responsible implementation frameworks will be better positioned for the more complex challenges ahead. Please reach out to me with unique ways that you're integrating AI into your professional and personal lives. And as always, blue skies and keep creating. Thanks for listening to AI for You. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to higher ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. So be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.